Hey there, Michael Griffiths here, founder of Referral Marketing Guru, and welcome to this week's Get More Referrals Today podcast. If you're a new time listener, welcome. I hope you have an amazing time. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Join us on YouTube, Referral Marketing Guru, where this as a video is up every single week, plus more videos to be able to help you grow your business, get more referrals, create great partnerships, and keep your clients for longer. Today, super excited because most of the time you get to just hear me. But today, it's not the case. We've got an amazing guest and someone who I connected to just a couple of weeks ago. And as I was sitting there and listening to the story and listening to what they were doing, I just went, my eyes were rolling backwards in my head in excitement. And it's just like another neuroscience, human behavior geek. That's probably the best way to put it. You know, I love that sort of stuff. It's what the limbic advantage is all about. And to me, getting tactics is fine, but it's so much more than that. You've got to be deeper in your own thinking, in understanding your own self, in understanding human behavior. Because when you understand that, you get to control so much of the outcome. So rather than just focusing on what's the next tactic I should use, as I always say, get underneath that, get deeper than that, get into where it really happens. And where it really happens is your own thinking. So I'm super excited today to be able to bring on to Get More Referrals Today podcast, special guest, Dr. Philip Agrios. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming in from the beautiful east coast of the US, I believe up there in Jersey. And let's start us off. Most people will be thinking, who on earth is this guy, Michael? I'll let you tell the story.
Hey, right. So, well, thank you so much, everybody, for having me, Michael. I appreciate you guys. Basically, I am a business strategist. I help. I'm an international speaker as well as a best-selling author. I used to be a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner. My specialty was thyroid and autoimmune, the sick of the sickest. And during my process, we were able to show why people that were sick, it was more painful to be in a healthy state than staying in their disease state. And during the process, when I was finding all this out, never realized that we can use this in business because my patients who were business owners were making major breakthroughs in business. So after a while, having referrals all around the world, I wrote my book and then later decided that it was time to close my practice and do this full time. So basically during the process over the last 30 years, I found myself on this journey, didn't ask for it, but found myself on this journey. And I was able to discover a hidden sabotaging trait that we're all born with. Yes, you can't get rid of it. You can just learn how to use it to your advantage. And the saboteur isn't there to undermine you. It's actually there to protect you from the very success that you seek, because that success on a subconscious level, if you actually achieved it, will be more painful. So you never get there. And when I first found that, I was like, nah, this is way too simple. There's no way. So I went out to try to disprove it. And over 30 years of thousands and thousands of people researching them, we couldn't disprove it. And we actually found a way to switch it off instantly, and it works 100% of the time.
Yeah, so people who listen to this show, you can see now why I'm excited. It's just like the cortex part of the brain. It's your survival brain. You're giving it to survive. It's not your fault that you're boring and rational and logical and analytical. It's there to protect you. And it's exactly the same thing with this. And that's just what makes me, you get tingles. I get tingles down my back going, it's just how it is. But once you understand that that's how it is, you can now do something different to get a different result and the result that you actually want. So this is the part I love. We're in one field. Here you are as a chiropractor, you're helping people with thyroid issues, and all of a sudden you start seeing a pattern. And as any genius does when they start seeing that, they go, hold on, there's got to be more than that. What was it at the early days where you just went, there's more than that. There's got to be something. Was it about trying to get better results for your patients with thyroid issues? Was it the curiosity? Was it what took you down the rabbit hole to start with?
It started with all the stuff that was happening in my own life. I went through a lot of things. I always joke and I say, when you find something that no one else discovered, and especially with self-sabotage, you're going to go through some stuff, right? So I went through from a financial ruin to a horrific divorce to I was on disability. I lost my practice. I was told I would never practice again. During that time, my father, a 71-year-old healthy male, died 7 months later from a brain cancer. And then I became the primary caretaker of my mom for 7 years until she passed. And then one of my daughters almost committed suicide. They said that if my ex came home 10 minutes later, she would have been dead. And I can keep on going, but I all used it in order to discover what was going on with me, and then realizing it that other people were doing the same thing, and then having that kind of conversation with people of like, are you stuck? Why are we stuck? And then we're able to kind of bring it down to 3 reasons why people sabotage themselves.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing. The simple thing to say here is usually people do go through their own things, but it's so much deeper than that. And I really appreciate that share. Let's jump into this. What are the 3 main reasons people sabotage themselves? Let's get into that, and maybe start with, just for the benefit of anyone that's listening that maybe goes, what do you mean by sabotaging yourself? Maybe let's start there as a definition, and then let's go from there.
Well, the original meaning of sabotage came from a French word back in the late 1800s, where factory workers would slow down and create inefficiencies to get the attention of the factory owners. And when I realized that it was really kind of a slowing down, a shaking up of things, I realized that that was a part of us to get our attention when things weren't going well. And then I realized it was more of a protection. Exactly what you said. It's not your fault, right? You're not a loser, and all the hundreds of the words you say to yourself that are negative, you're just in protection, because there's only 2 things we do. We protect, we grow, we expand, we contract, we give and take. We're vibrational beings. So the first thing that we discovered was that the reason why we sabotage yourself is because when you've had success before and you lost it, to actually get there again and lose it again, the pain of losing, or the potentiality of losing, is more painful, so you never get to that point. See that consistently with business owners. Even when someone's broke your heart, or you knew somebody whose heart was ripped out, right? They never get to that point again, because they always bring people that are less than that they want, or they're abusers, because if they ever get to that love again and lose it, it's more painful. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is that it's doing what it takes to get to be successful. So I have to read this book. I got to get on this podcast and learn and listen to all these speakers. I got to go get another education. I got to do this and this. Now I'll just Netflix and binge my my Netflix, and I'll get to it later, which it never happens. And the third thing is that actually increasing success will increase more pain. How many times of those of you out there that have actually increased your success got so overwhelmed with more pain that you never get there again, because you can't service all those people? Especially when I work with clients who are like, I want to start marketing and all that. And I go, it's the last thing you need to do. You need to get your foundation strong. You got to get your automations, things like to do that. Because if you double your business, you're going to have triple to quadruple more pain than you ever had. So people never get to that point either. So those are the basic 3 reasons people sabotage themselves. It's just protecting themselves.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know in the quiz that I've put back up on the screen for those that are watching, it's in the show notes. Those that are listening, whichever your favorite podcast platform is, sabquiz.com. And on there, and you were talking to me earlier, and I've done the quiz, so I know which one I was. Maybe not quite 100% agree, but that's, I could see parts of it. But you said there were 6. There's sort of 6 types of sabotage traits.
Actually, there's only 3. There's 6 sequences, so there's really only 6 people in the world. So those of you who are speakers, so yeah, there's a less than 1% of people that don't really fully agree with the quiz. 2 things happen. Number 1 is they didn't read the instructions, and they didn't take it as they were when they were younger.
Yeah.
They're taking it as of today, especially coaches and psychologists, because they're dealing with that. And number two, the reason why they don't agree with some of it, because they're actually using the solution and they're not doing that. So they say, well, I used to do that. Well, that's who you are. We're not talking about the 90% of the things that you that are going well in your life. We're looking at that 5, 10, 15% that's not. And that's when you go into protection. So when you took it and I saw that, the results, I was like, I'm like, okay, it could be because that's why you're doing it. But let's go over the 3 saboteurs, right? So basically, we found that there were actually 3 traits within us. We call it the director, the communicator, and the supplier traits. They are within us. Now, depending on how you're born and what sequence you were born with, they will then be placed into 3 types of sequences. So you'll have the dominant trait, which is your superpower. Then you have the mediator trait, and then you have the saboteur. So you have those 3, and they work simultaneously with each other, like a seesaw type of thing. So what happens is that depending on who you are, those 3, then the director, supplier, communicator will then be placed in that situation. So there are really now only 3 saboteurs. So the director saboteur is the person that is scattered. They're all over the place. Now, they'll get 99% done with something, stop, and then they'll do something else that's more fun. Chaos helps stimulates their brain. They don't like to be told what to do, and they don't take that much responsibility or responsibility. Now they can go to the other extreme, get so hyper focused, they have more of a time distortion, and they stay and they finish something. If it's 2 days later, they go, I'm done, and then they realize, oh my God, I got all this other stuff I got to do, and then they go back and they're scattered. So for the rest of their life, they will always have a challenge between scatteredness and hyper focus, because you never get rid of the saboteur. It's just there. And then by using the antidote, which helps you become more focused and things like that in a balanced way, that's what's happening. So that's what a director saboteur is. So many of you may, now as I go through the other 2, you may go, well, I have all 3. Yes, you have all 3, but you do one more than the other. And that's why when we go through our course, people really understand the 3. The second one is the supplier saboteur. Those are the people that overly give, they overly share, they overly supply. They feel they always have to give to others, and they're very generous, but what they find is that people don't reciprocate. So they have a hard time saying no to people. They feel that they have to focus on everybody else's feelings and not their own because it's more painful. And then what happens is after a while, they can go to the other extreme, go, you know what, I'm done with you. You've taken advantage of me. Screw you, done. And they take for themselves. But depending on the person's situation, they'll feel uncomfortable and guilty, and then they'll go back and overly give. So supplier saboteurs will always have a challenge between giving and taking and figuring it out. But they're more likely to be in the overly giving end, but they can become overly taking, just like the director. The director saboteurs are more in the scattered end, but they can be hyper-focused, trying to balance out the extremes. The communicator saboteur is a person who doesn't communicate well. They don't like to express. They overthink or overfeel. They get kind of in a loop. They have a hard time disconnecting because they don't like to confront on a verbal level mainly. Now they'll make a big email or a text, so they have time. It could take a couple of days to make sure it's perfect, and then they'll send it out. But verbally, they have a hard time confronting people because they don't feel as comfortable, because they don't want to feel stupid or embarrassed. So they'll pull back and be disconnected on that. Now, can they go to the other extreme if people disrespect them? They can blast them, or they'll just tell them they're an idiot under their breath because they don't want to tell the person, because no one really knows how they're feeling or expressing themselves, and then they'll go back and disconnect. If you piss off a communicator saboteur, it takes a long time to get back in the graces. So they will always have a challenge between expressing and not expressing, but they're more comfortable in a non-expressive way. So those are the 3, and depending on where they are in the scale, will depending on whether or not one's their superpower, one is their mediator, and the other one is their saboteur. Does that help?
Yeah, love it. And as you're going through them, I can go, oh, yeah, I can see how I'm a little bit of that. Oh, I can see how I'm a little bit of that. And I can see how I'm a little bit of that. So,
right. But when you took the quiz, I think you were
Communicator.
Communicator Saboteur. Did any of those three resonate more with you as you were a kid or back in teenager years, or do you feel the Communicator Saboteur was the right choice in that way?
Yeah, it's probably the number one when compared to the other two.
So the Director Saboteur, right?
Three, then that probably that would probably just be on top of the other two. But as you said, without a doubt, I can see how there's little bits of them all that.
Right. But you are more in relation to the Director Saboteur, you're saying?
No, the Communicator Saboteur is probably correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Above the other two.
You said number one. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see that. But now you have a podcast. You are now expressing yourself. You're actually using your antidote. But now you'll know your antidote, right? And now you'll know how to repeat that success. But the key is not just knowing the antidote or the saboteur. It's how all three interact with that. But that gives you the power to knowing who yourself, as well as knowing someone else. Imagine knowing a potential client, their saboteur. You'll know why they're resistant. Imagine knowing your child or your spouse or your loved one. You'll understand them much more effectively. When you don't close, it's because your saboteur, it's more uncomfortable to close that person at that moment than not. So we actually teach people how to increase their closing rates by 86.2% by knowing that situation along with a 6-step blueprint. So there's so many ways you can use this, but we have a very short period of time. But if people are resonating with that, they can take the quiz. It's 9 questions. That's it. Within a minute, you'll get your answer. But make sure, please follow the directions. Go back when you were before, not what you're doing now. And then you'll see how that can play out. And it's always there. It will always be there, because as soon as you start to release your personal and professional power and you start to feel uncomfortable, that saboteur kicks in to protect you. But as soon as you do that and you use the antidote, immediately the antidote will go into growth phase. So instead of doing this, you're doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. And I think what's really important is I just sort of bring this back in context for our guys. And like, most of you are all running a business, and right now something in your business feels harder than everything else. Like, you might love creating content, but you hate getting on a phone to a prospect. So therefore, all you do every day is like, oh, content, and you leave that thing over here that you hate doing sitting over there, and then all of a sudden, I suppose I better do that.
Right.
Well, it's not that you hate doing it. There's something internally inside you that's blocking you from wanting to do it or enjoying doing it. And whether it's like, let's use this analogy, in that everyone generally has had a horrific experience walking into a car yard where they've had the car salesperson pretty much jump on them and nonstop talk at them, and it's just like, I don't want to do that again. And therefore, we put off going back to experience that again. It's like, no way do I want to do that again. As if every single person in the whole universe is like that, which of course they're not. But that's exactly the same as what we're doing within our business. There are things that you love doing. You jump out of bed and you go, yeah, I'm going to do this. Because they're the things you love doing. You find them easy. You're in flow with them. It's just, they're simple things. They're probably non-threatening type of things to you. And then you've got things over here, which they feel hard. It's not that they're really threatening. If you got on the phone and spoke to someone, would you really explode? Of course you wouldn't. Right? And I think that's what's really important. What I love about all of this is, no matter what you are doing in your business, there is one thing that always works. You. There's one thing that always doesn't work. You. And the one thing we've always got to fix 100 million% of the time. You. And that's where it has to start. So hopefully you're listening, you get over and you do that quiz, because as soon as you start to understand why something feels hard, it now starts to make sense. There's a bit more logic to it. And now you can start finding the antidote to, okay, how do I come back around? You're not going to build Rome in a day, but at least you can start shifting things and changing things slightly so that all of a sudden that thing that you keep putting off that feels hard doesn't have to be hard anymore. I've got this piece of paper sitting right here in front of me. It's sat there now for, I don't know, probably 10 days. It probably isn't going to take me any more than about 5 minutes to do. But it's a pain in the backside and I don't want to do it. And it's more so, if I was to think it out loud, it's because the person I'm going to do it for, I don't have a great relationship with, and it's a pain in my backside, and I'll do it when I'm ready to do it. It would take me 5 minutes, but it's already been built up in my head as this huge task that's going to take me forever to do, and therefore, it just continues to sit there. Bet you've got that sort of experience in some way. So, with that being said, let's dive into here. How do you know what the antidotes are? How did you come up with that? How did you find that? Talk to me about that rabbit hole.
So if you want to go down that rabbit hole really quickly, I was able to discover how it all began. I was able to discover 6 steps that nature uses to come back from her storms. And I realized those 6 steps were the same 6 steps within us to solve any business or personal problems. And when I took the steps and I put them together, the opposite, it came up with 3 basic principles of the universe called the director, the supplier, and the communicator principles that the atoms to the galaxies all are governed by. And then I realized we are made up of the same planet and the stars, so we have the same laws. And by doing so, I then just changed principles to traits, and then realized that the 3 traits made up who we are, that everything is made up of 3 things out of these 3 director, supplier, and communicators. Everything is directed, everything's supplied, everything's communicated. And I started going through this process, and with the blueprint, as well as looking at how the body worked and other things, and taught myself quantum physics and everything else, it allowed me to really understand that the saboteur is the exact opposite to the antidote. So can you see the back of my hand there, Michael? No, right? Can you see the front of my hand? No. Why? Well, when you use your saboteur, you can't use the antidote because it's the exact opposite to the saboteur. And when you switch it and start using the antidote, it is impossible to sabotage yourself. We actually proved that in our 5-week course. So when you, as we know, our person or our business are one. So when you use your saboteur, both are affected at the exact same time. And when you use your antidote, both are affected at the exact same time. And by using the antidote, certain things in your personal life and your business can actually be resolved pretty quickly. Others won't, because they have much more deep-seated challenges than a 1 hour or 1 day of using it can resolve. But over time, we resolve it all the time, 100%. And that's why this works 100% of the time. And I didn't believe that either, but it's a law that I discovered. And that's the only thing I knew that works 100% of the time is a law. And that's why my book is called Life's One Law.
Yeah, love it. Love it. It always just fascinates me when things which just feel like it's just like no idea how that happens becomes logical. And that's, you've got all this over here where people could be listening right now just thinking, oh, that's just way out there. But you've brought it to simple little steps and simple logical ways of actually understanding it, that the two come together just so nicely. Yeah.
May I give you an analogy? Do we have time to give you one analogy? So you ever see the domino masters? They push this one domino, goes, the last one hits, and let's say balloons are released. What's the last thing you see?
Balloons.
The balloons. Well, that's your imposter syndrome. That's your anxiety, your depression, your stuckness, and everything you see and feel what? Last. So we take our coping methods and do what? We put them on the balloons, not the one domino. What's easier? Hold down all the damn balloons and stop pushing the one domino. That's your saboteur. And when you push that saboteur, every negative emotion it creates for you. So it's not looking at what happened last. That's why it doesn't work, or it doesn't last long. You have to look at the one domino. So when you push the saboteur, it goes down the road of frustration. But when you push the antidote, the exact opposite, it goes down the road of inspiration and motivation. And this is why we go from protection to growth back and forth. But now when you really understand it, you have control over it instead of having experience come in to make you understand.
Yeah, fantastic. Again, if you haven't already opened up the link, www.sabquiz.com. Takes 60 seconds. Find out what saboteur trait you have, and then you can start looking at underneath. Once you get told what saboteur trait you have, there's also then a little explanation on some things that you can start thinking about and things that you can start doing, which is the opposite, which is the antidote part. So make sure you go over www.sab.quiz.com. Once someone's taken that and they go, I'm just sick of not closing, or I'm sick of just not showing up the way that I want to show up, or I'm sick of just being afraid of being on video, or I'm sick of just not being able to get done everything that I said I'm going to get done. I'm sick of just not winning. I'm sick of, they're all the things that I know going on in our heads out there. How do they get to work with you? Talk us through that sort of process to how they can go from that way of feeling and thinking to being able to find out, okay, so what am I actually doing to sabotage myself? And how do I find the antidote to be able to stop doing that? Talk to me about that.
Well, right now we are offering a one-on-one 30-minute with me personally. So you bring a business and a business or a personal challenge with you. I'll show you how your saboteur actually created it and how to start solving it immediately. That's not going to happen for a long period. We're going to be going more into live webinars, but you have a chance to do that. So when you go to the results page, you can click on the button and get to that point. Once that occurs, and if I feel you are a candidate for one of my programs, and as I say, if I feel, I don't allow anybody all to come in, because if they're not ready or committed, it's just not going to work. So we have a 5-week live group coaching course called Transcendence 101, from self-sabotage to self-made success. It's an interactive live group coaching course, and we guarantee you in 5 weeks or less, you will stop self-sabotaging yourself or your money back.
Yeah, love it. To get over, it all starts with doing the quiz. www.sabquiz.com. And I want to bring it back around to be able to do this. I've always, like, those of you guys who have been around me for a while, you know that I'm huge on stop following the latest thing. Stop going, oh, because everyone's doing TikTok, I need to do TikTok. Or because everyone's doing Instagram Reels, I need to do Instagram Reels. Or because everyone's doing this thing, I need to do this thing. It might not actually be what you need to do, and you need to understand you and the way you work to start with. Like, people talk about, am I introverted or extroverted? Well, really, I don't believe you're either. You are whatever you choose you want to be. Okay? Like, take, you guys know background, primary school teacher. Yeah, sure, in front of 30 kids. I hated speaking to the parents. I hated speaking, being out there. Where now, put me in front of 15,000 people in an arena, and it's like, bring it on. Well, I didn't all of a sudden just find an extroverted bug somewhere. I just chose that that's what I wanted to do. And it's the same with you guys. I hear all the time people go, oh, I don't like being on video. Well, if you can talk and you've got a phone, just stick it up and pretend that you don't even know that it's recording. And I guarantee you can still talk. But then this is the thing that always gets me. If I was to go, think about your most prized possession. Maybe it's a pet or a child or a family member. And if I was to go, well, if you don't do X, I'm going to take that most prized possession away from you. Guarantee you do it. So therefore, you've got the ability to do it. And I think the whole thing of what we've just spoken about here is about being understanding how to be able to get to that point of where it's really easy flow to do it, rather than you creating resistance for yourself. And the only reason you're creating resistance for yourself is because your whole existence, your whole brain, the way you are neurally wired is to protect you. That's what it was there for millions of years ago in caveman days. Don't get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Make sure you can build a hut and know which fruit and berries to pick so you had food. Well, we've evolved since then. The saber-toothed tiger ain't coming to get you. But the way you are wired is exactly the same. It is there to look after you, protect you, keep you safe. And therefore, we have to understand that, and we have to therefore be able to do little things that are going to give us the advantage. And that's what this is about. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you jumping on, sharing what you did. You can hear my passion in it, anything to do with neuro thinking and human behavior and the way we're wired and the way we can, in a way, I call it the way we can trick ourselves, because that's what we've got to do. We've got to trick ourselves to get then the results that we want. And every single one of you, and I don't care right now if you're worried about the so-called recession, there's still the same amount of money out there in the world. People will still be getting it. It's just the way you're wired to what you do next. And that's where this can really help you. So, Philip, really appreciate you jumping on.
I am so glad you brought that up. Everything is within you. There's no such thing as lack. People say, I lost my confidence. It's, no, you don't. It's in you. You're just using the opposite part of the confidence. Everything's within you. It's up to you what you want to tap into to show yourself in the world. So beautiful words. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, 100%. And so truly believe it. Okay, team, that is another week of Get More Referrals Today podcast. If you love the episode, you know it. We don't run ads. We don't have sponsors, because we just rely on you sharing it to one other person. And if you do that, we get to continue to grow. We get to make greater impact. We get more people who are just amazing at what they do, wanting to come on and share that with you. And in the end, we all get to grow our businesses. And the more you get to grow your business, the more you can contribute to society, and the greater impact you get to make, because it's up to us as business owners to make that impact and help change the world. So go share this with one other person. Make sure you go and take that quiz, sabquiz.com. It's in the show notes if you need the link. Reach out to Dr. Philip Agrios on any of his socials and make sure you say hello. Till next time, team, take care, and I'll see you next week. See you later.